Hi guys.
You've heard about the Norwegian method, and now it's the Trimarni method
There's also the Australian method.
and the Australian method, and there's probably a lot of other methods. But we are going to talk about our method of coaching long distance triathletes. I'm just going to change up my screen. All right. Boy, we get these questions a lot. Krell, coach, what will be my biggest swim, bike, and run workout? Coach, how many months do I need to commit to Ironman training? Coach, how many hours a week do I need to dedicate to my Ironman training? How many weeks will I taper before the Ironman? Why do you think we get these
What
questions?
what will be my biggest week?
What will be my biggest week? And when will it fall? Why do you think we get these questions?
Well, it's of course, inexperience, not knowing, not knowing what is needed. What do I need? And it's kind of like all the hype out there from other athletes, like, oh, you training for Ironman, or oh, I cannot do Ironmans anymore because I just don't have a time to dedicate those 25 hours a week, or those all those 100 miles every weekend, right? So I cannot do Ironman anymore.
Yeah. And these are really challenging questions for us to answer, especially when an athlete comes to us from a different coaching method or they're preparing for their first Ironman. Just be similar to what Corral just said, is that there is that mentality that in order to do an Ironman, you need to be doing big workouts.
You need to practice the distance before you get there.
Right. And if you know anything about our coaching or you've been with us, this presentation should hopefully help you better understand, and for any new athletes, better understand how we coach our athletes. Because if you know anybody who is coached by us, you'll probably realize that our athletes don't do a lot of high volume workouts. They're not doing 100-mile rides every weekend. If some of them might not ever do a 100-mile ride. Our athletes aren't running 20 miles. Some of them might not even run 2 hours. But we've had athletes have a lot of success in the Ironman distance, and we want to help new athletes, current athletes, potential athletes, or anybody who's interested in training for an Ironman better understand the method that can be used to train for a long distance race without doing the standard high volume workouts. So, first of all, we need to think about the demands of long distance triathlon. I think we can all agree that Ironman and half Ironman, for the majority of people, it's not a speed based sport. Your focus going into it is not about being fast. You don't go into your training thinking that you need to be faster in order to complete the distance. Rather, what you want to think is, I need to be strong. I need to be durable. I need good fueling and hydration. I need to be mentally tough. It's a long day. I have to be good at making decisions. We often say that training is more mental than, or racing is more mental than physical, just because you're having to um, answer questions all day and troubleshoot and make decisions. Also, having good economy and efficiency, because this is you're trying to manage your energy throughout the entire race, and then having good endurance. And I think the last one is really the one that a lot of athletes tend to obsess about and associate endurance with having to do long workouts. Would you add anything to this list?
No, just kind of explore more what the last point we just said, like the endurance, or the aerobic capacity. It's built over a long time period, and how is it built? Well, it's built, from month to month, season to season, and also by being consistent with the
Year to
training.
year.
Yeah, year to year, you need to be consistent with the training. So if you only work out on the weekends and sporadically throughout the week, there is no consistency. So you're not really building that durable base, which allows you then to go into the Ironman race and race it well. So to build the endurance, to build the aerobic capacity, it takes time, and every athlete is different. Every athlete respond to the load and the specificity of the training differently, and so we all need to look at this fact when we prescribe the training. So it's not just like, we are all heading to the same Ironman and we'll be doing all the same workout and we'll all be performing at our best level. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, which is a great segue into the concept of progressive overload. And this is very important. And this is how we base our coaching, is this idea of progressive overload. So what is it? Progressive overload is a gradual, and I really want to stress the word gradual, and systematic increase in the difficulty of workouts to induce physiological changes and improvements in your muscle strength, power, speed, and aerobic fitness and endurance. Then the overload part is the volume, duration, or intensity within a workout should exceed the current, and again, I want to prioritize this word, current capacity of your muscles and metabolic system within reasonable limits. So when you think about this word progressive overload, every athlete who comes to us is at an individual starting point. So no two athletes are the same. And an athlete that comes to us that has been in the sport for a while but has taken time off for several months, or has had a setback or an injury, that athlete's starting point is going to be very different than where they were a year ago. And so gradual increases or changes is going to look different for each athlete based on what they can tolerate. And the overload component is not where you want to be or not where you think you should be, but where you are right now and the capacity of what your body can manage right this moment. Now, the reason why we want the progressive overload is that the body needs new stimuluses. When you're new to the sport, you make improvements very rapidly. It's so much fun to be new to a sport, and you improve and you can adapt so quickly because everything is new and different. But over time, we have to apply new and different stressors, but in a very systematic way to help with your endurance and your strength. Now, if we repeat the same workouts, the same training, or the same type of activity over time, you're more likely to experience a plateau, risk overtraining, injury, or burnout. And we see this a lot by athletes, and that every single year they're doing the same type of training for an Ironman, or they're doing the same workouts. And what ends up happening is that they end up not improving, going backwards with their fitness, or just feeling burnout. By the time they get to the race, they just want it to be over with because they've just done the same thing over time.
Yeah, and I would also add it to it's a progressive overload, but it's also progressive systematic overload. So there's a system to the madness, to this method, and like you said, it's how you set up the training that will make the difference. Also, somebody who is new, simply just going and completing the longer distance workout on the bike or on the run, it's enough stimulus. For some other athletes who are more seasonal, they need to introduce variable efforts and intervals, and typically on the back end of the longer ride. So you have to refocus. You have to bring your strength and mental game together to finish it strong. For some athletes, or I would say this pretty much applies to everybody, is like the overload doesn't mean that, I'll be doing 100-mile ride and I'll be running 20 plus miles. That's my overload. And if you just think about it, let's say that instead of doing this mega 1 day riding so long, you can do, if you have that available time. So let's say it's on the weekend, you can do 4-hour interval bike ride followed by 45-minute interval brick run. Then you take some recovery time, some rest for let's say 3-4 hours, and then guess what, you go to swim and you do another 1 hour or 75-minute swim workout. That alone, it's a huge overload for the day, right?
Yeah.
Because you finish that bike, you finish that run, and now you're just ready to crash and just eat everything that you can find at home and just rest and be done with it. But guess what? You can't. You have to be smart with your how you refuel after the route, so you don't feel absolutely trashed and blah for that swim, because you know the swim is coming and you will not want to go to the swim and you'll be dragging yourself to the pool and it's like, geez, I can't do it. But if you find the strength and the mental toughness to do it, it will not just benefit you physically, it'll benefit your mental game. So when it comes to these points of the race where you just feel like the low moment is here, you're just like dragging yourself, it's so hard and difficult. You train your mind to be strong.
Mhm.
You know, you train yourself to overcome these low moments, just like, this day where you biked and run and now you have to still swim. So overall the day, it's a huge training overall.
Yeah, but nothing was necessarily, relatively speaking, you weren't doing a 7 hour continuous workout.
Yeah.
It's split up.
And a lot of times these split workouts have much bigger benefit to your overall, building the aerobic base and getting that the durability and endurance, because you have to deal with these breaks where the body switches to the recovery mode, and now you have to, bring it back from the recovery mode, and that, that kind of like that lazy fatigue state, and refocus and do another workout. So sometimes we say, hey, we want you to run today after you bike, but you will only do like a 10-15 minutes short break run, and then we want you to run again, a few hours later, or the evening run, and it's just like a aerobic run, and the goal is to find the, what is it that your best easy pace, what is it that, easy aerobic effort when you feel tired and smashed.
Yeah.
And some athletes would decide, you know what, I don't have a time for it, so I'll just do, instead of 10-15 minutes and then later on I'll just do it all in once. It doesn't have the same benefit.
Yeah. So some other workout plateaus include haphazard training routines. And so what this means is not really having that systematic approach. Maybe it's biking every day, or, jumping into random group workouts, or not feeling like doing a workout doing the trainer, so you ride outside instead, or going too hard on one day and too easy on another day because you're smashed. So there really needs to be a systematic approach in your training. You might experience a plateau because you're not progressively overloading your muscles. And I think a good example of this is the athlete who is always talking them out of a set or that extra rep. When the gains are made in the back half of workouts. They always are. Anybody can start a workout. Anybody feels good in the beginning of workout. But how many times have you had a workout where you said, I think that's good. I don't need to do that last round. I think I'm pretty proud of myself. Or you don't push that last one.
I always the excuse, I listen to my body, I'm good.
Right. I always say last one, fast one. So you're not actually really in the worst that can happen is you fail, but at least you tried and you reached your limit. But always kind of giving up when it gets hard, that's where, if we could push through safely, that's where the magic happens. So if we're not overloading the muscles, and the same with strength training, we're not making adaptations. Inconsistent training, so just having skipping a lot of workouts or not being consistent with the workouts, poor lifestyle habits, so not recovering from the sessions, not sleeping well, not eating well, not fueling well during your workouts. And then also it can be a mistake as triathletes. We always seem to do our long workouts on the weekend, but if you're always doing your hardest or longest workouts when you're in this fatigue state, that might not be ideal. That you may compromise your ability to improve because you're not mentally or physically able to actually push hard during those sessions.
Yeah. So if I can just add on to a few of those points, like you mentioned, instead of like doing the specific workout on the trainer, just decide to go and do a group ride or ride with friends, right? And it's really typical. And so we have athletes who, see that there is a specific work on the schedule, but you know what? Friends called and I want to ride with them, so I'll do that. And so I'll complete the workouts about the same length or the duration, so the box in Training Peaks turns green and the athlete feels good about himself or herself, right? But it's not that that intention, what was behind the workout. You're missing out on the specific training load and overload and specificity in general. So that's one of the examples. Like the poor lifestyle habits, like you mentioned, the recovery and sleep, which is extremely important. I don't know, do we have another slide on this topic?
Not on specifically that topic.
Yeah. So we have to all understand that nobody gets fitter by just doing the training.
You definitely don't by not sleeping or not eating well.
Where the magic happens is in your recovery.
Yeah.
The training is just that is that necessary stimulus. But when you actually improve and when you adapt to the training, so the training adaptation happens when you are recovering, meaning you refuel well, you always refuel well, you always get a good night's sleep, good meal throughout the day and hydration. So that's where you get better. You don't get better by just checking off the workouts. And that's one huge misunderstanding where athletes are waking at 4 o'clock in the morning so they can squeeze in the workout because it's on my schedule. I have to get it done. That's how I get better. Well, guess what? You will not get better. You will not adapt. You're probably just digging the hole and getting more and more fatigue. So that's why the training is not the same for all the athletes. We have to look at your available time to train and look into what can you do in terms of the recovery, what's your other responsibility in life, work, family, and everything around, in order to assemble the proper training load that will look very different for athlete A versus athlete B, C, D, and so on.
Yeah. You really have to ask yourself, like, are you the type of athlete who is compromising sleep and nutrition in order to train, when really the sleep and the nutrition is what is helping you adapt to the training? So there needs to be some changes if that's the case.
Yeah, and into the last point where you said always doing the longest or the hardest workout, when you are fatigued, I would just add to it another example of athletes they freaked out when they realized, like, oh, I'm doing the Ironman, but it's going to be really hot. So all of a sudden they change, and all the sessions needs to be in the middle of the day in the hottest heat. So instead of actually gaining fitness by doing the workouts in the best possible environment, so I can gain that fitness, they just suffer through the worst conditions they can find on earth and thinking they're doing themselves a favor by doing it. But again, you are missing out. So first you need to get fitter, you need to get faster, you need to get stronger, then you can start worry about some specific adaptations.
Yep. Very well said. So let's look at two examples of progressive overload. The first one would be strength training, and that's really where this concept of progressive overload comes from. So we want to lift weights heavier than what your muscles can tolerate. So whether that's going from 10 pounds to 15 pounds or increasing the sets or the reps, and your muscle fibers will then begin to tear. And then this stimulates the body to rebuild the muscles, which then increases the opportunity to gain strength. So with this progression, overload, recovery, then you have built a muscle that is stronger, larger, and more resilient. But if you're always going to the gym and lifting the same amount of weights, doing the same number of sets, then your muscles aren't actually adapting. You may feel sore, you may feel good about yourself that you got in a workout, but from a physiological point of view, from an athlete point of view, when we're preparing for the demands of a race, we need to make sure that we're overloading and progressing, because that's showing us that we are making progress. With endurance exercise. So we want to perform workouts that challenge the current abilities of your muscles, heart, and lungs. You increase your mitochondrial density in the muscles, your capillary density, improve fat oxidation. So we're trying to challenge our current abilities. And for some athletes, that might just be adding the weather component, that you might be used to doing 3 hours in cool weather, and now you have 3 hours in hot weather, and that is a challenge to your current abilities. So when we look at what makes for an effective training, there's 4 important principles. There's the frequency, how many sessions per day or week that you complete, the duration, the length of time for each bout of physical activity, the intensity, how hard you work in a single workout, and then periodization, where we vary the intensity, duration, and frequency throughout the year. Now, Our job as coaches is to carefully find that balance that works for you, and it changes between the frequency of your workouts, the duration of each session, and how intensely. Now, we can make the assumption that the longer you go, the less intense it's going to have to be. The shorter the session, the easier. It could be a recovery session, or it could be an intense session. The more often you work out, the more fatigue you're going to bring to those sessions. So it's a very specific balance, and it takes time to understand you, the athlete, on what does that balance look like. And also, if we want you to be able to absorb a bigger load, then we also have to think about, well, how do we change this balance from what you were used to keep you progressing? Now, the pitfall for a lot of athletes is that athletes will work out too hard, too often, or too long. And all of that is very detrimental to health. And you're not going to adapt to any type of training stimulus. But in contrast, working out too easy, too often, or not working out enough or long enough can also be detrimental to fitness gains. So it's our job to find that right balance. And that's why athletes hire a coach, either because it's hard for you to figure out that balance on your own. Maybe you go too hard or too easy when you try to do it on your own, or maybe you've struggled in the past to find that balance and you need somebody else to help make those decisions for you.
Yeah, and this is so important, that last, kind of like longer point of the periodized training, because we can't be just working out. There needs to be some variation, and there needs to be a specific load. So, in the previous pages, it may sound like, oh, I'm training for Ironman. It has to be all the time that training overload, like we talked about. But, a specific insertion of easy days, allowing that, that training stimulus turn into the training adaptation, it's so important. And on this topic, a lot of times we have athletes where, just because we have a training in mind and think like this may work for this particular athlete, but then as the athlete goes through that, and we plan that and we communicate with athletes and we realize that, it's just not happening, and we need to change the direction. We need to either, okay, let's see if we insert this easy day or 2 easy days, we're fresh, and then you still have a strong back end of the week, or do we need to do something else? Or sometimes, athlete reaches out, I'm really tired, I'm worried about tomorrow's run or bike or whatever it is, and I don't think I can do it. And we kind of looked at it, and you know what? But if you look at a bigger picture, after tomorrow there are 4 easy days. So how about you try to just do your best? If you can't do all intervals, just go and complete the duration, or you can start interval and see how it goes, adjust the intensity, and encourage athletes to, let's try to complete a workout with maybe some modifications.
Let's try to push through that
then
fatigue.
It'll help you not just physically but also mentally, and then we will have 4 easier days to absorb all this intentional overall. That's where the training camps comes in place, right? Mm-hmm. Where you intentionally put your body into that fatigue state over a period of several days, where you're working a lot more than you would normally do, and then comes the period of resting, so you can absorb all this hard work.
Yeah. So this is the fun part. The answer is not always long workouts, right? So athletes think that they're training for an Ironman, and I need to be doing long workouts, and I should keep getting longer with our workouts. And for a lot of our athletes, they're not going longer. Sometimes they're even going shorter. Sometimes we do longer sessions 8-12 weeks out from a race, and then weeks going into the race, they get a little bit shorter, but a little bit more intense. So it varies for a lot of athletes. So the answer is not always longer workouts. And I love this mindset. I would really encourage athletes to take away this mindset that more is relative. It's not attached to a certain number. So it's not running, I need to run 14 miles, 16 miles, 18 miles, 20 miles. I need to bike 90 miles, 100 miles, 110 miles. I need to swim 4,000, 5,000, 6,000. It's not attached to a certain number, but it's more stress than what you are currently used to. And this training stress must be applied gradually, strategically, and intentionally. So more is more. So we're just going to quickly go through some of these and give some examples of how we can overload the body without just focusing on the miles, because we do go by duration for 99% of our workouts. We're focused on the time that we want you to complete a workout rather than the miles completed.
And it's easier even for you in terms of planning, because you know that, okay, I have a 5.5 hour bike and 30-minute run at 6 hour workout. So you know you will be doing 6 hour workouts. So if that 6 hour workout will take you 9.5 hours, then something is wrong.
Yeah. So increase in the overall weekly volume. So what does this look like? Well, you can go from 10 hours a week to 12 or 13 hours a week without necessarily adding 3 hours to your longest workouts. You can increase your weekly volume in a variety of ways. You can add more frequency, so you can do a workout more often or workouts more often. You can add a greater duration to certain workouts. You can also increase the intensity. So rather maybe going easier, you complete 15 miles in an hour, but if you go a little bit harder, you complete 17 miles in that. So we can increase the overall volume in a variety of ways, and that means you're adding more to that week. You can also increase the workout frequency. So rather than swimming 2 times a week, you could swim 3 times a week or 4 times a week. Instead of running 2 times a week, you can run 4 times a week. You could run off the bike. You can do a 15-minute run. You could do a double run day. There are so many different ways to increase frequency, which will then mean that you're doing more. This makes sense. You can increase the workout duration. So certainly we could increase, if you're used to doing hour training rides on the trainer, we can increase it to an hour and a half on the trainer. If you're doing a 70-minute run, we can increase it to an 80-minute run. But these are very small progressions, especially with running, because we don't want to overload the body to a point where we would increase injury. We can add intensity to the workout. So this is very specific depending on the phase and the athlete. So we might add very intense 25s in the pool. We could add some type of intense workout on the bike, like on and off, 30 seconds hard, 30 seconds easy. We could add some pickups or hill strides to a run workout. So there's a variety of different ways to add intensity to a workout. We could add new or different training stimuluses to the workout. So something that you've never done before. Maybe we do a bike run workout. That's a different training stimulus that's going to stress your body in a different way.
Run strength run, which is our new favorite.
Yep. We could do a run strength run workout. We could do a swim bike swim workout. There's so many different ways. We could do stimulus runs where you're running on grass and trail and jumping on picnic benches and on and off curbs. So again, this will stress the body. You could also, maybe you've never swam in the afternoon. That would be a new stimulus, just a different time of the day that you're not used to working out. Maybe you're not used to running at lunch or doing a workout in the evening. Again, that's new. Back-to-back workouts. So obviously brick workouts. It's a great way to add more volume, more frequency, more intensity by doing something back-to-back. You're also working through in a fatigued state. You can build intensity into a long workout. So we can do this in doing a progressive workout where you get stronger as the workout goes on. You could do a workout where it's a long workout, but in the middle, you're doing a specific set. So you're able to still have easier parts of the workout, but you're also raising the overall stress load of that session. Strength training is an obvious progressive overload, and then strength specific work like paddles, hills. We prefer hills over speed work just because it's a safer way to get the heart rate up when running, slow cadence or big gear work on the bike. So those are some examples of how we progressively overload the body. Whereas for a lot of athletes and coaches, when they think about training for an Ironman, the mind automatically goes into long workouts. And that's where the overload comes into play. But what ends up happening is that because of that long session, the athlete's either too tired to complete the next string of workouts, so they're not able to stay consistent, or the quality of those sessions decreases, or they need more recovery before they can go intense again, or because the workout keeps getting longer, the overall quality of that session goes down, just because the athlete is trying to complete the workout rather than do something of quality during that session.
Yeah, no. So one last thing I would like to add to this, that what we also like to do is to sprinkle the long training days throughout the year, not just those last 8 to 10 weeks before the Ironman, but throughout the year, which is much more efficient and beneficial to the athlete. Of course, it depends on the athlete ability, but like we do these long bike rides in the winter, in the spring, in the summer, and in the fall. So you are getting more familiar with it. You're getting the benefit of it. So it's not just such a big toll when you finally get to it those few weeks before the race. And like you mentioned, when the typical training for Ironman that most of the athletes and coaches prescribe is to increasing the distance as you go. So basically, what happens? You start here, and you start doing those shorter runs, and you are adding more. So then 3 weeks before the race or 2 weeks before the race, you hit your 112-mile ride and check it off the list. But then you are basically entering that the phase of getting ready for the race, fatigue and burnout, and really tired. Instead of, if you inject these longer training days throughout the year, it's not as a big toll for you later when you start doing more of the specific race specific training.
Yeah. Now, a training plan is dynamic. So when an athlete comes to us, we have an idea of what we would like to achieve based on when we get to know the athlete and the athlete's history and their goals, but we can never predict what we're going to do. That's why if that was the case, then everybody could just use a pre-built training plan and be successful. But we know that's not the case. The goal is always consistency. So we're trying to train as much as your body and mind can safely handle, but then strategically increasing the volume, frequency, intensity done progressively over time. So our job as coaches is to take into consideration your current level of fitness and health, your risk for injuries or setbacks or health issues. So if you're an athlete who has just overcome an injury or taken a break from training, and you're a very durable athlete, this was just a freak accident, your training and your progression is going to be very different than somebody who just came back from an injury, but you are a high risk athlete. You do get injured very often, or you do get sick very often. And so how we progress you is going to look very different. Just because you have an Ironman in 6 months, that's great. And that's exciting, that's motivating, but we can't just skip steps just because you have an Ironman. We have to make sure that your training plan makes sense with progressive overload. And if all you can handle right now is 30 minutes a day, we have to start with where you are. We also have to think about your lifestyle habits and your ability to support the training demands. So you may want to do 5-hour rides. You may have time to do 5-hour rides. But if you're not sleeping well, if you don't eat well, if you're not supporting that training session, if you're not fueling your training sessions, then that training isn't going to work for you. So it's great if you can check it off and you're motivated to do the work. But if you're not supporting the training, that training's not going to work for you, and it's not going to show itself on race day. We also have to take into consideration your life stressors and obligations. So it's great that, or you're signed up for an Ironman, but we can't have you waking up at 3 a.m. in order to do long workouts just because you have family activities. We have to factor those things in, and we can come up with different ways through frequency, intensity, and duration to help prepare you to the best of your ability with how training can fit into your life. We also have to factor in your mental health. You know, you can be super healthy, durable, great endurance, but if you're not motivated to put in the work, then what's the point for us to give you those training sessions? You know, you have to, and we all struggle with motivation at times. It's so easy to skip a workout or to not perform a workout as intended. And that's just part of being an athlete. Stress, depression, anxiety, feeling burnout, isolation, loss. We have to deal with all of these things, and that's going to impact your training. And then, of course, the weather. You might struggle to perform in the hot weather, as Corel mentioned before. And so we have to think about different types of training prescription for you so that you can keep making adaptations. So hopefully this is just makes it more clear that this idea that athletes doing these 100-mile rides, doing these 20-mile runs, thinking that they have to check off these certain distances in order to prepare for an Ironman, it's just not practical. And we even see it in the professional athletes. There just isn't a prescription of how to train for an Ironman. It's very flexible based on the athlete, but also having coaches who understand and experience in the coaching and the preparation for an Ironman to be able to deliver that. So what is effective training? So what can you take away from this? That we need the incremental overload so that we can improve our performance. And as Corel mentioned before, training only provides the stimulus. We can train, and we want to train to get fatigued and to have some tissue breakdown. We also train at an easy intensity so that we don't have the fatigue and we don't have the tissue breakdown. But our fitness gains and the changes occur in that recovery period. So everything that happens between two training sessions. And in order for that to happen, you have to refuel, you have to eat, hydrate, rest, and sleep. And this is how you get better. So if you are doing workouts, if the only way for you to complete a workout is to skip a snack, not eat before, rush off to work, wake up early, get 5 hours of sleep, you are not responding well to training. And if you can't recover, if you can't stay consistent with your training plan isn't working for you. So in other words, the overload principle, frequency, duration, intensity, and inadequate recovery, it's too excessive or not enough. So here's some takeaways summarizing this presentation. These are the things that we believe in that help our athletes excel in the Ironman. And I just want to say, and Corel will agree with me, that our athletes do long workouts, but it just looks different. And what it looks like and how it looks is very different than the majority of long distance athletes. We really encourage athletes not to rush into long distance triathlon, which means the Ironman. Try to get stronger and faster before you go longer. And Corel mentioned that earlier. We want our athletes to arrive to their races feeling fresh, rested, confident, fit, and healthy. We find too many athletes arrive to their races burn out. They are injured. They're just overcoming an injury. They're not confident with their abilities, and they're not excited to race. Enjoy the process of training. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to want to do it. So we need to also think about how we can make the journey of training for a long distance triathlon more fun for you. And as Corel mentioned before, it takes years to build resilience and durability. I am doing training now that there is no way that I could have done 10 years ago. It takes time to build this. So just because you see another athlete doing that, don't undermine your abilities. Just keep in mind that you have to start with where you are right now.
Yeah, and I would also add to the same point that maybe you also reached a point in your life, later, at your age, that you can't do the same training that you used to do before. You cannot be putting these mega training sessions that you once were able to do and you have the results. You have to add a lot more recovery days in between these sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you mentioned, you can't do the workout, or you couldn't do the workout that you do now before, but I'm starting to feel really from the other end of the spectrum where, I cannot do a lot of the sessions back to back that I used to do. I have to insert a little bit more rest and recovery, so I can still do it. So it's really specific where you are in your life and athletic journey.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's not just that oh yeah, if I wait, or in 10 years I'll be able to do these mega training.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not.
Yeah. It takes time to improve your technique, your economy, and your efficiency. Athletes, they really rush through the process of training for an Ironman. And what I mean by that is that they're just so focused on completing these training sessions. And if you want to perform well in an Ironman, you really have to think about your limiters. And most triathletes, they don't swim enough. They need to improve their technique in the pool. That they don't have good skills or pedaling mechanics, or aren't strong enough on the bike. And most of all, athletes aren't economical with their running. In other words, running expends a lot of energy. Body temperature goes up, heart rate goes up, form breaks down. So if you think about these things, if we were to just add duration and higher volume to your workouts, what do you think is going to happen if you're highly inefficient? It's hard for you to move forward, whatever sport that is, and it costs a lot of energy for you to perform certain workouts. Do you think just going longer is going to make you better? It's more likely to make you fatigued and increase the risk for injury. So if we could spend some time getting you stronger, more economical, this doesn't mean that you can't race, but rather than saying, hey, I have an Ironman in 16 weeks that I have to prepare for, well, why don't we wait 6 months for you to start training for the Ironman? And let's spend these 6 months really focusing on your limitations, so that when you start your training, and we don't really like to use that word like you're starting today, but, switching that mindset. Okay, I've done the work. I've prepared myself to train. Now I can actually train. Long distance triathlon requires a lot of self-awareness, listening to the body, and communicating with your coach. This is extremely important, in that you have to be able to listen to your body. Just because you have an Ironman coming up, this doesn't mean you're not going to have niggles. You're not going to have bad workouts. You're not going to have to miss or modify workouts. And that's just part of the training. Training should always fit into your life, not the other way around. And long distance triathlon isn't just physical. You have to have a strong mind, a good application of sports nutrition. And the last and most important is communication is everything. If we don't know how your body is adapting to training, or how your life is impacting your training is not going to work for you. So if you're not communicating that you're not sleeping well, that your stress level is extremely high, you just experienced loss in your family, you're having knee pain or ankle pain, you have a work trip coming up, you have a busy weekend. If we don't know these things, then your training prescription that we're prescribing for you, it's not correct, because those things are going to impact how we perceived you to perform during those training sessions or during that training block. Anything else you would add to this?
Nope.
We summarized it all.
And we said it everything like 2 or 3 times. So
Yeah.
we're good.
Okay. All right. If you have any questions, just let us know. Bye. Bye.